Okay, and we're live. And I've got Hannah here with me from Grace Dancing, who are putting on the show Sincerely Survivor at Fringe this year. Hannah, how are you going?
Hey Tom, I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I thought for this chat I would play this game called Human Fall Flat because I figured that with it being a bit of a physics-based puzzler, the way the little character in it moves is about as graceful as I would be dancing. Like,
That's great. Well, I'm sure the team at Grace Dance Company will be able to, take you on with a bit of training and see what we can do. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show and yeah, for being willing to talk about our work.
yeah, no, that's fine. And so the show that you're doing for Fringe this year is called Sincerely Survivor, and it's one of the biggest things I noticed with it is that it really focuses on mental health. But another thing is you guys actually went to an asylum to film it, right?
Yeah, yeah, we did. So we went to three different asylums actually over a 2-year period,
Oh wow.
and we went into these spaces as a means to reclaim and reauthor these spaces. For me, this work is a protest, and what went on in these asylums. I prefer to use the term psychiatric institution.
Okay.
Uh, but what went on in these old day asylums is that people would be locked in for all different reasons, and they were told that they'd be safe, but they weren't. And they had many forms of abuse come at them, and all at the hands of the government and the state. They'd be wards of the state. And yeah, it's quite horrific what I've learned over the past 2 years about how these people were treated. But unfortunately, the mental health system still exists, and modern day psychiatric institutions do still lock people up on an involuntary basis. And so this work is a protest in response to that, but also a call to action as well. It's quite a lot to capture in a debut film, Fringe work, but here we are.
Yeah, no, I mean it's the two extremes of Fringe, isn't it? That you have the lighter, fun stuff, which is a bit more along the lines of what I'm doing, and then the very heavy vibes, like such as your show. And I think that one wouldn't work without the other when it comes to something like Fringe.
Mm, mm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a democracy of art. Is that what they say?
Well, I haven't heard the term before, but it sounds right.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds all right for Fringe. Absolutely.
So yeah, so like mental health is a big part of your show, and so is dance. That's how things are being expressed. Can can you run me through the process there of how you express these these different forms of mental health, and what happened in these psychiatric institutions through dance?
Absolutely. Well, um, Tom, to give you a bit of context, most of my knowledge of dance that's been created about mental illness or mental ill health, or asylums or psychiatric spaces, a lot of it, when it's created, it's actually really stigmatizing. And people dance to look crazy and to try and be a crazy person because that's what they think a crazy person is. And so we kind of take that and we work against that and we flip it on its head because I feel like that's quite stigmatizing. And instead, we take dancers. I took dancers on 5 artist residencies to these abandoned psychiatric spaces, and I led them in what I would say is improvisation. And we had a score for the improvisation, so it was kind of like an underlying directive for what the movement was to be about. And one of the first things I said is, please do not try and act like a crazy person. That's far from what we want. It would be very stigmatizing and completely inappropriate. But the score was to be present in the space, so the psychiatric asylum space, to be present with each other and to be present with themselves as we go into these spaces. Because as you're walking through these asylums, so we went to Pleasant Creek Hospital, which used to be Pleasant Creek Training Centre. We also went to J Ward Asylum, and we also went to Aradale Lunatic Asylum, as they called it. And
Sweet.
walking through these spaces is haunting. It is very confronting, and Basically, I was asking the dancers to, and myself as a dancer included, to really consider how empathy would respond to these spaces and how can we capture that in our bodies.
Well, yeah, and that's one thing. Like, I'm not a very spiritual person. You know, I don't believe a whole lot in vibrations and whatnot and all that. I'm much more of a bit of a science type, but I do feel like walking into a place like those old psychiatric institutions, that you would get a strong case of bad vibes.
Yeah. And the dancers all said that we made a decision not to film at night for a very good reason.
Oh, that's understandable.
But yeah, I mean, I went into these spaces and I said to myself, Hannah, you've got to be sober. You've got to think sober thoughts. And when I say sober, I mean basically we can't ride off on the feeling of there are ghosts and like all of this stuff, which there probably are, let's be real. But we couldn't ride away with that thought. Instead, we had to be grounded and embodied and stand strong and dance strong for the case of advocacy. And yeah, but I do know that, you know, at Pleasant Creek when we were there, we did one like late afternoon shoot. And as we were leaving around 8 or 9 p.m., a group of kids came in with Ouija boards. And so, yeah, so, I mean, it's, you know, we talk to survivors of these institutions and they feel like they can sense ghosts as well. So, yeah, it is quite heavy. And I'm a bit like you, Tom, in that I avoid going, like getting caught in the mentality that, oh my gosh, they're haunted houses and they're going to come out and get you and they're going to harm you and all of this stuff. But at the same point in time, we do face a reality that these are dark places and a lot happened in them, and there is a vibe, you know, there is a general vibe that it is quite confronting to go through them. I know at J Ward they have ghost tours and they have various people that go through and talk about the different lives that have lived in the past. And I don't know how much to say on camera about this, but they have like mediums that go on the tours with them as well. So like I was like, no, we're not going to go near that. But it is a thing. Like it is a thing. But we were intentional to go in the daylight for all of these things and stay really grounded and sober and make sure we eat enough food and make sure we have really good night's sleep so that we can create the best art that we can create for this work.
Yeah, and with the dance that you're talking about and the way that you wanted dance represented, you're saying that you didn't want people to rely on those classic tropes of dance, and I'm sort of thinking of maybe more something like a Lady Gaga video, like a video phone or something, where it is relying on a lot of those shorthands of like straight jackets and all the frenetic convulsing movements and all that. That I imagine what you're more trying to go for is, instead of dancing to look crazy, doing perhaps more dancing as a representation of what people suffering from mental illness have to endure and perhaps how they experience the world.
Absolutely. And it's dancing as a vessel to capture the emotional experience of someone enduring mental illness, mental ill health, or mental distress. You can kind of cover it in all those terms. And it kind of seeks to represent what someone might have gone through in a very art-based sort of way. We're not telling the audience exactly what they go through, although throughout the film it's structured with voiceover throughout it that talks to the survivor experience, which we received those survivor recounts from people who've experienced the Victorian and or other mental health systems, but particularly the Victorian Mental Health System, and they have diagnosed mental illnesses. But the recounts weren't of people that went through these asylums in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s. These are recounts of modern day people. And what we're on the hunt for at the moment is to search for the survivors of these institutions. And we're starting to find a few people, but most of them have gone undercover. And unfortunately, when the deinstitutionalization process happened, a lot were lost in the cracks as well.
Yeah, because I guess that's the big thing, that you see those sorts of psychiatric institutions, and you assume that you go like, oh, well, that was all back in the day. That was all like one flew over the cuckoo's nest shit. That we don't do that anymore. But from what you're saying, that a lot of the experiences you were drawing from are from people from relatively recently.
Yeah, yeah, and so we go into these abandoned psychiatric spaces, but we are inspired by current recounts of people suffering from mental illness. And one thing to note also is that the Royal Commission into Victoria's Mental Health System is happening at the moment, and that's I have been really challenged by the way they've recruited people for the submissions to make submissions, and it's been, unfortunately, the Commission has captured some advocate voices of the mental health consumer community, but it's actually captured more, I would say, the voices of carers rather than the voices of the survivors themselves. And so as someone who identifies as living with a mental health diagnosis, I wanted to create a work that was more accessible to those sorts of people, and so that hopefully their voice could be amplified in a way that, the government in their democracy so often fails to do, without realising they have best intentions. And I love that there's a Royal Commission, but I would have loved it to be more accessible to the mental health survivor community. And this work, through its art-based research and through our journey to advocate for mental health through the arts, I really believe that the arts is a very integral part of storytelling, and it's really helpful to have, the art as a balancing point for how we tell stories and how we share our work. So that's all informed this project, and we have many more to come as well.
So one thing that you mentioned there, Hannah. So just hang on. So you're telling me that the Australian government, or at least one of the branches of it, is currently undergoing a royal commission that is failing to deliver on what it promised?
No way.
You are blowing my mind right now.
Yeah. So it's actually the Victorian government, because it's the Victorian Mental Health System Royal Commission. But when I heard that they were recruiting for submissions, basically, to make a submission to the Royal Commission, you had to stand up in front of a room. Let's say, I imagine there'd be about 20 to 50 people in what they describe as a hearing, like a court hearing, and you had to tell your story. And I'm sorry, but to do that could be very re-traumatizing for someone, and it's not quite accessible. And for many people that have not shared their story before, it's not going to be their first way of sharing their story. It's not going to be their first inkling of, I'm going to stand in front of a group of 50 people and have my words recorded, and it will go to the government officials and they're going to hear it. Like that's in my opinion, I don't think that's appropriate, and I don't think that was accessible to the mental health consumer community. And I've heard of stories of them having roundtable discussions about mental health, and one of my friends, I won't mention her name, but she's a big mental health advocate, and particularly in the arts sector. And she rocked up to one of these events, and she was the only person with lived firsthand survivor experience. Everyone else in the room were carers.
Yeah, and this whole approach, it does sound like the very neurotypical response to these sorts of things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's coming from people who haven't had to experience this system from any perspective aside from pretty much a capital.
Yeah, or a monetary funding perspective, but it's not actually about the funding. It's about the lived experience and what people are faced with still today, and the discrimination we receive on a systematic level. So this work is a protest to do that, and an invitation for survivors of mental ill health and these institutions to run healing through the arts and peer support and storytelling.
Yeah, and one thing, I was watching the trailer for Sincerely Survivor, and there was a game that I was thinking about playing while we were talking here called Half-Life 2, because there was a section that I'm almost up to in it because I've replayed it again, because it's a great game, Half-Life 2, big fan, play it all the time, any excuse. But there's a section in it, a chapter called Nova Prospect, and it reminded me of that because that whole section is set in a jail, and that you're dancing in psychiatric institutions, which are meant to help people with the mental disability and suffering mental illness. But the place where you were dancing in to express this was a jail, pretty much. Like that's how it looked to me.
Yeah, well, one of them, Tom, one of them actually was a jail. It was called J Ward Asylum for the Criminally Insane, and it started off a jail in the Gold Rush times. And it was basically where they'd put anyone that was playing up during the Gold Rush era into this jail. And then Aradale Lunatic Asylum was built, and they had all these wards. So they had A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I wards. That's how many wards they are. It's the biggest place in Victoria for institutions. And this is based in Ararat. And what happened was that if someone became a criminal, or like someone was a criminal that had a mental illness, or someone started doing criminal related things in Aradale Lunatic Asylum, they would be sent to J Ward Asylum. And so you had people being admitted to J Ward. It was a jail, but they were treated for mental illness there. And I'm sorry, but what sort of hospital is that? How can you lock people into rooms? And like they were 3 meters by 2 meter rooms with just a bed and a window up the top with like brick walls, thick brick walls, and they'd be locked in each night. And there was a more high secure area, and then there are less secure areas. But this story of people being locked into institutions because they have mental illness and because they're wards of the state is very common, and it still happens today. And yeah, it's quite scary, really, to be that vulnerable as having a mental illness and then to be locked into a space and told you can't see your family or your friends. Or, in J Ward times, the J Ward was only shut down in the 1990s, but in J Ward times, people could live there from age of 13 till some people. So a little boy was admitted there at age of 13, and he stayed there until he was very old. And then there were some people. This guy turned 100. Whilst he was in J Ward, and the community was like, oh, no, it's a bad idea that he's still in there because he's 100 years old, and no one should be 100 and in J Ward Asylum for the criminally insane. And so they made this decision to take him out of the institution and give him like a community home. But because this guy had lived there for so long, he didn't know what life outside of the walls of the asylum was like. So he wasn't able to survive, like he wasn't able to manage. And this is often what happened. So in the 1990s, when the government decided, they seconded the communities, and they were like, it's bad that people are locked up in these institutions on like their blood is on our hands, basically. We need to take them out and deinstitutionalize these places. And in the process of deinstitutionalizing, in favor of community sport, so many people got lost between the cracks. They just fell between the cracks, and a lot of them actually, unfortunately, trigger warning, a lot of people went and committed suicide, and because the change was too much and they weren't supported enough through it. And it's just a really sad story, really.
It's your classic Shawshank Brooks moment.
Tell me a bit about Shawshank Brooks. I haven't seen.
Oh, Shawshank Redemption. There's a quite moving scene where one of the characters who was in there, initially for like life without the possibility of parole, finally got out of jail for about after being institutionalized for about 50 years or so, and most of the movie is set in the jail and centers on the experiences of Andy and Red. But Brooks gets this quite moving scene with a voiceover where he talks about how the world has changed so much since he went to jail. The things are just too different for him now, and he was so used to jail itself that he just can't adapt to the outside. And it's much the same. There's a famous thing of where he, in his government issued flat, he inscribes on one of the cross beams above on the ceiling, "Brooks was here." And then, much the same thing, that because he just doesn't feel like he fits into this world, that he suicides.
It's
So,
so sad. It's so
yeah,
yeah.
no, it's and it is, and that's I guess much the problem that I guess the big thing with the way that things are approached when it comes to mental illness is almost more that it's a problem to be these people are problems to be put away and removed from the wider society, rather than that these are people who need help, and that what do you know that helping them doesn't make any profits on the short term, so you actually need to put a bit of effort into it.
Yeah. And the thing about my understanding of mental illness is that recovery must take place with community around. You can't just shove someone in a secluded place and say, "Oh, we're healing you," when actually you're just stabilizing someone, and there's no room for healing because you're not in a community context. So I'm all about relationships and in psychology. So just a heads up, I'm studying to be a psychologist now, as well as a practicing artist. And in psychology, we talk about the biological, psychological, and social approach to treating mental health. And so you've got biological, which is like the medications and like how much sunlight you're getting and like good diet, everything. You've got psychological, which is all of your talk therapy stuff and transforming the way you think about the world and relearning certain ways to approach your thinking and everything and your relationship to yourself and other people. And then you've got the social aspect, which is all about being in community. And I feel like so much emphasis is put on the biological stuff when you're in hospital, and barely any is put on the social stuff, and it's really sad. Yeah, but beyond that as well, it's about bringing people. We can't just expect to put people on the outskirts and hide them away and say they're safe now, they're not in our lives, we're going to forget about them now. We have to actually embrace people that live with the reality of mental illness into our communities and really consider how their lives can make an impact on the world. And but the good thing is, Tom, is that not everyone stays in mental health institutions. Unfortunately, a lot of them do, and they go in and out of the institutions for a long, long time because treatment is just not up there, and we need better treatment in Australia and Victoria. But maybe I can talk a bit about my lived experience in this space, because this informs everything that I'm saying, and and everything that this work is about. Would that be relevant, Tom?
Yeah. Let's we can move on to that now, and I think especially for like the sort of work that you're doing, that it means a lot more when you know it's coming from a real one. So if you want to touch on your experience with mental health, I think that will be very informative as to what what we'll see in Sincerely Survivor.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, my experience of mental health, mental illness, whatever you want to term it. I like the term mental ill health because it's less stigmatizing. It feels less stigmatizing, at least. But when I had just graduated high school, and there were a lot of changes going on, and I was in quite a traumatic time of my life. And I actually went through so much that I went into an episode of ill health and was hospitalized for 2 months involuntarily in the Victorian Mental Health System. So when I was first admitted, I was put into an adult psychiatric unit in one of the rougher suburbs in Melbourne. And most of the people there were there for drug-induced psychosis. But I wasn't there for drug-induced psychosis. And I was also like a mere, just 18-year-old, very vulnerable in the middle of, what the doctors described as a manic episode where I was completely out of my mind, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I had no insight whatsoever around my behavior and around what was appropriate and safe. And I was put there, and I was not safe. They put me there saying to my parents that I would be safe, but I was not safe. And at the recommendation of a mental health advisor and advocate in our lives, my parents rocked up every 4 hours for almost a week to advocate that I'd be specialed by a 24/7 nurse, so that I could receive the treatment that I needed, and so that they could ensure my safety. At one stage, there was violence in the ward, and I was put in solitary confinement, which is basically a locked room. You're shoved in there, not given much explanation, and not given a time frame as well. You don't take any, you can't take your phone. You're not allowed your phone on the ward. At least I wasn't, and there were nothing that I took with me. And I was put in this room with like this little like pee bucket and this little like bed with like a plastic sort of sheet over the top. And locked in until the violence died down. And, if you want an experience of, isolation like that, us as Melburnians, we've gone through a lot this year of being locked into our own houses. And I feel like the empathy for people who've experienced solitary confinement has really increased because of the amount of that Melburnians have experienced of being locked into their houses and they can't really go out at the hands of, the government. I think we've done well. We're through it at the moment. We're through it, but this is a very common occurrence in psychiatric institutions where people are locked into rooms and not really given much explanation and not given much support, and it's forced treatment. There's other types of treatment as well, such as chemical restraint, where people are injected or given drugs to sedate them. But yeah, I had a lot of medication that was given to me to help me calm down. Unfortunately, people can become addicted to this stuff as well. So yeah, it's very complex and not the best practice either. But I was admitted into this institution. Thanks to my parents' advocacy, I was moved to a child unit, and I was still in a locked ward for another month. And then, the only thing I got outside, of the outside world, was that I was allowed to go outside, but it was about a 3x3 meter courtyard, and it had a chipped painted flower mural, and on top of that was barbed wire fence. On the floor was this tar floor, and this silver table that you find at picnic grounds and stuff, and that was my outdoors for a month, almost 2 months. And I always say to people, these places aren't places for healing. They're not designed to heal you.
You mentioned there that you were put in solitary confinement, and what you described is pretty much I haven't had to be involved with any mental health stuff at all, but I have watched the TV series Oz, and that sounds exactly like what people had to go through in Oz when they were put into solitary confinement, and those people were actually criminals.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just the thing, we're treated, in the work, if you watch it, you'll come across a line and it says, I feel like a criminal, but I don't know what I've done wrong. And so people with mental illness are made to feel like they're criminals, but they actually haven't done anything wrong. It's just the fact that they're very vulnerable and they have mental illness. And it's horrific. And the crossover between the psychiatric system or mental health system and the justice system is just horrific. The amount of intersection is crazy. But yeah, I mean, if you were, if a sane person were to be put into, let's say, Pleasant Creek Hospital or even solitary confinement like I was, I think you would go crazy. I don't like to use that word, but I think you would have a mental distress reaction, and you would come out feeling a bit like, oh my gosh, I don't feel well, mentally. And it just shows that it's just not evidence-based. It doesn't work. It doesn't work to treat mental illness or heal mental illness. It might stabilize you for stabilization, but it does not heal you at all.
Yeah, it seems like that what it does is it gets you out of the way, and if fortunately you're just having a bit of an extended bra moment like you were, that you can work your way through it. But if you require some active and ongoing support, that's just not there.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, when people are kept involuntarily, particularly for things like the more complex experience of schizophrenia or psychosis, people can stay in these institutions for so long, and they have no one really advocating for them. They don't know how to advocate for themselves. They just feel like they deserve it. That's all they feel like. But thankfully for me, I somehow got out of there after 2 months, and I went into a community-based treating team where I was treated for my mental health, and recovery took a long time. I was basically just bumming around for the rest of the year. Not doing. I couldn't work. I couldn't study. My mum was my carer, and I had to learn how to re-engage with society. Like going out for a walk or going shopping was such a stretch because I was so used to the low stimulus. And so for me, like 2 months of that institution, imagine if you had a year being in there, or 2 years, or 50 years, as some people have in the asylums of old, and or sometimes now. Imagine if you had experience of that and then you're expected to reintegrate into society. It's just so hard. It's just so hard. So I came out, and then the following year I started studying dance at Deakin University. This was, honestly, I feel like this was where my healing actually came from, telling my story through art and from dancing. By the way, when I was in hospital, I was told that I couldn't dance. They said it was too dangerous for me and that I might hurt myself, or that it just wasn't right. I shouldn't be dancing. And so now I go into abandoned asylums and I dance in them as a protest, and kind of like an F you, to the to the people that told me I couldn't do it. But yeah, so I went back to university and I studied dance for a year, and then the following year I picked up psychology because I was so certain that I was not happy with the mental health system at its current level, and I wasn't happy with the way people were treated, and also I wanted to help people navigate the system so that they didn't have to go through what I went through. But also help myself as well. I wanted to learn more about mental health and psychology, because what I was getting from a lot of my clinical treating teams just felt like the same old jargon. And it works to an extent, but I wanted to know it, like, what's the saying? Get it from the horse's mouth. Is that what it's saying?
Yeah.
It is? Yeah. I wanted to get the information firsthand from the people that give it to this professional psychologist anyway. And so I studied psychology. The following year, I went to London and studied organizational psychology and dance over there. So since then, I've been working around integrating organizational psychology principles and mental health best practice within the dance sector. So there's a lot of advocacy and work that I do in that space. And then the following year, I graduated with distinction. So I made it through, and I'm now on a long pathway to becoming a clinical psychologist with lived experience of mental health. I'm the only one that I know of anywhere that is open about their mental health diagnosis or at least experience, and is pursuing and or getting qualified in clinical psychology. So yeah, it's quite a controversial one, but this is where advocacy matters, and this is why I do what I do, because people need the representation. And one of the findings that you will find from the interim report of the Royal Commission is that we need more consumer leadership. We need more consumers in a position of leadership around mental health. And so this is the future for the industry and for the mental health system. We won't have a future without the consumers speaking up. And so this is purpose of my education, but also the purpose of something like Sincerely Survivor, to amplify the voices of the consumers so that they feel heard and they feel seen, and they can tell their story too.
Yeah, to let the average person know what's going on, and I guess how they can help and how we can make a difference for people who are going through their own mental health problems.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, with COVID-19, we've seen a rise in mental health issues around Melbourne, particularly. There has been just a trigger warning again. Sorry, there's lots of trigger warnings in this show. We should write that on the description, I reckon, Tom.
I think people, it's pretty front and center that if you watch Sincerely Survivor and you're surprised that it deals with some pretty heavy shit, I mean that might be on you a little bit more, that you can't extrapolate from context.
Yeah, well, we have promoted that this work can be triggering for people. We've promoted that on all of our websites and Fringe site. But basically, the Royal Commission, the experience of Melburnians during COVID-19, there was a 1/3 increase in suicide ideation and self-harm admissions to psychiatric institutions in Victoria during the COVID period. And that, for me, just highlights the importance of this work. We do it for these people. We do it for the most vulnerable. I'm not actually here for the money. This is, apart from a small crowd fundraiser that we did for one of our residencies, this work is entirely self-funded, and it's a grassroots project. And so we welcome all the support we can get and all the monetary support we can get. But this work is not about pleasing democracy or pleasing like the people that fund the works. This is telling the stories of people that have lived it, and and I dedicate this work to the survivors of mental health that are all around us that often don't get seen and heard.
Yeah, no, I think at the very least, especially advocation in the mental health sector, like what you're doing, you can tell that anyone that's doing it is genuine, because they're certainly not doing it for the money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But, it's just when you become one of those suited ghouls on like the board of either like a hospital or somewhere more in the government, that's when it's much more of a financial thing.
Yeah, but it's stressful. Yeah.
And I think it's really, really good what you're doing as well. That you're the Kevin Bacon of this footloose of a mental health sector that we have here in this country, and that someone needs to let the sheriff of these mental institutions know that the people should be allowed to dance.
Yeah, that's a good one. I love that.
Well, I came up with that on stream. I hold the copyright. That when you see the spec script for Footloose 2 out on the blacklist in a couple of years' time, that came from me.
It came from you. That's right. Yeah, awesome. No, I love it. And I agree. The people should be told they can dance. They should be they should be able to dance. And so that brings me to the launch, actually, of Grace Dance Company, which is Sincerely Survivor is the debut work of Grace Dance Company. And this company was launched on World Mental Health Day this year, so October 10. We launched the vision of the company, and it's a real, we've been on a long road to get here, but many years really. But the work Sincerely Survivor kind of encapsulates our focus on mental health, and as our debut work, I'm really pleased to bring it to the world. But Grace Dance Company's mission, our sole primary purpose and mission, is to care for dancers and communities for artistic practice and cultural storytelling with strong mental health inclusion priorities. And so we seek to advocate for the sustainability and diversity of dance practice and support the dance industry, but also our broader communities in our COVID and mental health recovery. And so we've got a program that we're going to be launching next year, which I'm so excited about, where we'll be basically offering dance for health, disability inclusive dance teaching. So it's not dance movement therapy. We are not dance movement therapists, but we are inspired and work. We are inspired by their work and their philosophy, and we seek to offer dance within a therapeutic sort of context or within a disability context, with the asserting that dance should be for everyone. It's not just for the elite, not just for the white. It's not just for the people that don't experience mental distress or mental illness and are often pushed the people with the mental illness are often pushed to the fringes of the dance industry. This work is dances for everyone, and our company seeks to advocate for that.
Yeah, I was speaking to another dancer here on stream last week or so, and she did much the same thing. Her name's Ebony. The whole thing, what I'm picking up with dance, and I'm not a big dancer. I'm not a big move my hands or really get up and do everything type guy, but I've started to realize that there's a lot more to dance than the film clip to Single Ladies, and the dance can look a lot of different ways, and that especially when in that space, when it comes to things like a disability or mental health, that dance is really what you make of it and what you want it to be.
Absolutely. And I actually, is it Ebony?
Ebony Jade Mueller. It was I think the first stream that I did on here was with her.
Yeah. Amazing. So I studied dance at the same time that Ebony was doing her PhD at Deakin University around dance therapy.
Oh, and, really?
A bit of crossover within our dance classes and our work at Deakin. But yeah, I absolutely love Ebony's work and her philosophy behind dance. Dance should be for everyone. Even her work at Fringe, I think, encapsulates that as well. So yeah, I'm so grateful to be a member of the Fringe community this year, where we have so many incredible artists presenting work, but also presenting participatory work. Work that engages the audiences as much as the audience, like work that collaborates even with the audience, is so great. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna have your dance piece exploring how dance and movement can express the lived experience of mental health. That Ebony's doing her sick sad disco at home, and then I'm going to be doing a special where I talk about people sticking toenails in their eyes and crawling up a toilet stall and doing diarrhea into the toilet.
Oh my gosh, that's horrific.
Yeah, that's me. So at least my show's more at the end, so I can really bring the tone down as a bit of a closer.
Bring the tone down, get us grounded, get us out of the, headspace of, mental health system. It doesn't uphold the human rights of everyone, and it can be very exhausting to work in it and or advocate around it. It's quite confronting. So yeah, it's great to have other works that balance us out, and I think the Fringe, the portfolio presented at Fringe this year is so vast, and it is the art of the impossible. We created this work, and we are creating work during very impossible times, but yet it still happens and art still exists. And, if we take away anything from what Fringe has presented this year into the future of, the Victorian and Australian economy, art is central to our existence and to our human experience, to the well-being of society. So I really do hope that these sorts of works can be amplified and considered for the future of creative problem solving for our nation. Yeah.
Now that ties into something as well that I've sort of been thinking about. You mentioned how you're studying psychology. That one thing I've been wondering a bit about myself is that from I guess a technical paperwork perspective, that I don't have any mental illness or anything wrong with me, but as I mentioned, the things that I'm going to be doing in my show, the things like I mentioned, people putting toenails in their eyes, people crawling up toilet stalls, all that, having my girlfriend break up with me because I sucked up juice with the vacuum cleaner. That these are things that I just come up with my head words, and then my mind voice tells me these things, and I write them down, and then I learn them, and I say them in front of a camera. So I was wondering if maybe you wanted to do a bit of see if we could do some on-stream diagnosing and see exactly what's up with me.
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm not yet a clinical psychologist, so I have no qualifications to diagnose anyone, and that would be breaching practice regulations. But I can say that mental illness mental illness works on a continuum, but also mental health works on a continuum as well. If you consider them like a crossroads, so you've got one going up and down, mental health goes up and down for everyone, and mental illness goes goes horizontally for some people as well. And so I consider everyone has some version of mental health, whether it's poor mental health or good mental health. It depends on the time. And I feel like every Victorian has realized that, oh my gosh, my mental health matters in me doing life, particularly this year. And so whilst you might not have a mental illness, everyone has some version of mental health or mental ill health. And it's important to know that, mental ill health does not discriminate. It does not, it is not exclusive to only certain people. And it is, just because you're privileged doesn't mean you can't suffer from mental ill health or mental illness. And I'd say that mental illness happens when your mental health gets so bad that maybe you need a diagnosis and clinical intervention. And that's when it becomes described as a mental illness, and you'll get a certain diagnosis with that. But yeah, I'd say mental health applies to everyone. And so, the way that you're creating your work, Tom, is really, I feel like it would be capturing some of the subconscious that's going on through this lockdown period. And it's really a way of telling your story. And I think telling stories through art is one of the most powerful ways we can, first of all, connect with our community, but also find healing for ourselves if we are experiencing any form of mental distress or mental ill health or mental health, struggles. And we can always improve, and we can always get a healthier mental outlook. And I feel like psychology should be accessible for everyone, and that seeing a therapist is not just for the people with a diagnosis, it's for everyone. And there's always more work that you can do to improve yourself and your mental well-being. So I feel like that is one of the ways that we can really consider how to do that. Come to Melbourne Fringe.
Yeah. And I guess it's sort of like we're saying, that mental health can be something that almost like comes in waves, and sometimes you can be feeling real good, sometimes you can be feeling real bad. Just like how more physically that you can get sick, you can break a bone, and you need more support in the physical sense. That sometimes you just go through a bit of a moment, a bit of a darker period, and you need more support on a mental, like your mental well-being as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like prevention is so much better than reaction as well.
Yeah.
Putting things in place that support us in our well-being, overall, like well-being, and the fact that, mental health does carry over into our physical health. When I ever feel anxious, my primary diagnosis is not anxiety, but whenever I feel anxious, I feel like a lot of people in society experience anxiety and or some forms of depression. It can be seasonal, it can be for a week or, a little while, but, if it's lasting for, quite a while, more than 2 weeks, it could be a sign that something's going on. And I'd recommend you see your GP to just check in and be like, hey, this has been happening. I don't know what's going on, but I just want to check in and say that, I am struggling a bit at the moment. And your GP should be your first port of call for accessing mental health stuff. But what I was saying is that, what was I saying?
We're talking about how you were saying initially, like, mental health, it can be something that, whether it's seasonal or it's sparked by something that it's, it's not just almost like a chronic thing where.
Yeah, and it applies to everyone, and prevention is key, But sometimes we don't. This is the thing that I've noticed with the pandemic and with our government's treatment of the pandemic, is that sometimes we don't realize we've lost our mental health until it's gone. And we can't prevent something. We can't prevent from losing something sometimes before it happens. And so this is where, you learn from your mistakes, and early intervention is good for next time. And this is where insight really matters. And going to GP, seeing a psychologist, I consider that everyone kind of has if you consider everyone to be a glass, like a cup of like a glass jar or a cup, and we've got rocks at the bottom, and so our rocks are our genetic predisposition for experiencing mental ill health or mental illness. And so when we start filling up the jar with a bit of water, the rocks, will reach a certain threshold. And if our stress levels the water is the stress levels, and if our stress levels don't ever reach the threshold, we might not ever get a mental illness. But once it reaches the threshold, that's a sign that actually you need help. And your genetic predisposition can influence how soon you might need help. And so for me, when I was just 18 and I had all those stressful things happening in my life, it was like all the water rising and rising and rising until it reached, like, the threshold, and then it went over the threshold, and I needed as much help as I could get. But that threshold happens at different times for people. And so it's really important to be kind to yourself, but also to know that help is available. And on the Grace Dance Company website, gracedance.co, we have a list of mental health resources for Australian audiences to get in contact with. So it'll give you contacts of free counsellors. It'll give you the directions of, if you're in a crisis, this is how to engage with, the crisis and triage treating team and the CAT team and the police if you need it. But generally we avoid the police because they don't really have that much mental health training, and the police already have a lot on their hands, and I have huge respect for them. And then it's also got resources on, like, how to access, like, online resources and self-help guides and programs that you can get through your GP. You can do CBT self-guided for, 2 months over online, and you don't have to see a therapist. You do it from the comfort of your own home. And you engage with that, and a mental health care plan given by your GP can help fund that. And there's other things like peer support groups, so you can connect with, like, other people that are experiencing a similar diagnosis to you. There are some places that give you free counselling, and there's also, like, a go-to guide of how to access a psychologist through the mental health care plan through your GP. And we've also listed a few really good places to look for psychologists, but your GP will also have recommendations. But yeah, a big thing about this work is that we equip people to self-advocate for themselves as well, and realize that their mental health matters just as much as the person's next door to them. So we should all be really doing what we can to protect our own mental health and to self-care and to hold ourselves, but also allow other people to hold us.
Yeah, and that I'll say that to anyone watching as well, that you don't need to go to a therapist to get some CBT, that there are other options out there.
Absolutely. And you can check them out on the list that I've supplied at gracedance.co /mental health advocacy. There's a few resources, and, therapy comes in many forms.
Certainly does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you mentioned, it was brought up that you founded the company Grace Dance, and you've done a bit of other work through Grace Dance as well, haven't you?
So we actually launched this year. So our debut on World Mental Health Day, which was October 10, which is literally last month, and I can't believe it's literally last month because we've done so much since then, and it's really been a convergence time. So for the past 2 years, we've been developing this debut work. The official launch was on World Mental Health Day for the company, though. And we are, opening up opportunities for more people to engage with the company next year. We've recently, we're setting up a Dance for Health program to enable people that might live with, mental health distress or mental ill health. It's not therapy. It's not like accredited therapy, but it can be therapeutic, and there is a difference between the two of them. And so we're seeking to engage with people that either live with disabilities, and I include mental ill health as a disability here. It can be very disabling, to find a sense of meaning and community and physical outlet through the company. And so we're looking to offer programs through that. And so that'll be a way that people can engage with, physical movement is something we really struggled with through this lockdown. I know I have been dancing a lot less. And I need to get back in the studio or back outside to, an open COVID-safe space. And so through the company, we're going to give people opportunities to engage with physical exercise in a way that is creative and artistic and storytelling. And it's not just exercise for the sake of it to lose weight. It's actually exercise to through dance, we find community and we find storytelling, and we find, meaning for ourselves and self-expression and a physical outlet and fitness. And all of these incredible things that dance offers the world. We seek to make this more accessible to the average Joe Blow, or any like people interested in expanding the movement practice, as I describe it, through the company. And we'll also be offering these services through the National Disability Insurance Scheme as well. So yeah, we'd love to engage with people in supporting them in reaching the fullness of the human movement experience.
Yeah, and it feels like, I mean, maybe it's a direct response to your own experience and what Grace dance is giving people that was missing, especially from your time in one of these facilities, is a bit of that external stimulation that, as you mentioned, that you were sort of just locked up there. There was nothing to do, and maybe what could really help people is giving them something they can focus on. And at least with something like dance, it's something that you can really manage yourself. You can put as much effort into dance as you want to, and really make it your own thing. And that maybe if people had something else that they, whilst they're in one of these sorts of institutions, that they can focus on and put all their free time and attention to, that just might make things a bit easier for them.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it is, dance does give us a goal and a purpose. For me, my training in dance growing up, I credit to my speedy recovery from mental ill health. My training was grueling, and I kept showing up, and it was hard, and I didn't always get the center stage roles. But the resilience I learned when I was training as a dance artist, honestly, I credit that to my speedy mental health recovery and my work ethic today. Dance has so much to teach us, and it taught me so much. And I feel like in society we don't value it enough, and we don't acknowledge the gift that dance is and the possibilities that it offers us. And so if you've been, run down through the pandemic and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I can do anymore, and I don't feel like I'm capable, really, of entering the outside world. I know that feeling very well. But if you are feeling that way, I invite you to send us a contact us form on the website, gracedance.co. We'd love to connect with you, but we'd also love for you to use dance as a way to build your resilience back up and to really build your capacity. It's about building capacity. And so dance just offers that 100%. And so we invite you to check out our website if you feel like it's a good fit. Even just like fill out one of the contact us forms. I'm happy to take phone calls or like emails from anyone that wants to talk more about this. But yeah, like this is, a growing company, and we seek to respond to the needs of the dance community, but also the broader community, like Melbourne community, in our COVID and mental health recovery. And yeah, I've got a beautiful team ready to support you guys. And we're going to be ready next year. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, no, this sounds like some exciting times, and the town of mental health better watch out, because no one puts baby in the corner here. Or that's a different movie. That's not Footloose, is it? That's a different one.
I don't know. I'm so bad with movies. I haven't watched like a single movie for like 3 months because I've just been flat out with all of the launches and the work. So I've been like very task focused. So yeah, I'll need you to enlighten me.
Yeah. Well then, anyone who's not helping you with the mental health problems, they better watch it out, because they have it coming.
Yeah,
that's a different movie again. Sorry.
Well, feedback forms exist for a reason. So yeah. But yeah, I mean, this work and my vision for the future is to advocate for mental health and for those that have lost their voice, either through the pandemic or through the system of mental health. We seek to amplify your voice and help you access and self-advocate for yourself, and help you access healing, really, access recovery to the fullest. And, our COVID recovery is going to be the biggest feat yet as a society. So, but come and we're showing until the 29th of November, which so we've got this weekend and the next weekend. And then on the 29th of closing night, directly after at 6 p.m. 5 p.m. At 5 p.m. on the 29th, we're having a Q&A with the artists from Sincerely Survivor. So it will be me and my creative artistic team over Zoom. And we'd love to invite you to turn up and learn a bit more about what influenced this work and our process through it, and ask a few questions as well. The microphone will be handed to you. So, connect with us and check us out on their website and, book tickets today. I guess that's what I can say. Anything else that I missed, Tom?
No. I think you've done a very good job of naturally moving into plugs and hitting all of your beats. I've heard pros on podcasts like Comedy Bang Bang not do it as well.
Oh wow! Well, that's a compliment.
And so you've actually already done some shows already as well, haven't you?
Yeah. So we launched on the 13th of November. So we had shows last weekend, and we've got shows all this weekend, and then we've got shows all the following weekend. The feedback we've received already has been, oh my gosh, people are just loving it. We've had a lot of mental health survivors come to me and say, thank you. Thank you so much. We feel seen in this work. We feel like our voices are heard. And that's, for me, that's the best accolade that I could get. For survivors of mental health to feel seen and heard. That's why we do what we do. The feedback's been incredible. We've been reviewed by a few people, and that can be accessed on the Fringe website as well. We'd love to invite you to attend the show. We've also got the opportunity for audience members to give feedback for themselves and reflect on the work too, which is on our website, which you'll find links to on the Fringe page as well. So we'd love, this is about building community. It's about building hope and helping enable people's healing and recovery, and peer support as well. So we'd love to connect with you and really I send a warm welcome to anyone listening to this. Check out our show at Fringe. We've got 2 weekends left, including this one. And on closing night, we've got a Q&A on the 29th at 5 p.m. So do show up. I would love to meet you. Would love to have you a part of this advocacy conversation.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there because we've just come a bit over the hour. Look, it was great having you, Hannah. This has been really, really informative talk. And as well as that, I'm pretty much out of puns for both dance and mental health movies. I don't know. I don't know how I'd work anything from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest into conversation right now.
Yeah, too good, Tom. Thank you so much for having me.
No, that's fine. So, let me just navigate to my YouTube tab here. And all right, thanks again. And hopefully I'll talk to you later.
Will do. We'll speak soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.